All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Tonight. I am your hardcore host, Mad Dog Butch. With me, as always, the Grizzly Boon to my Kareem Muhammad. None other than Brace Beemer.
Yeah. Great show today, Tim.
And this week, we are going all the way back. You know, there was a lot of stuff that happened in wrestling the last couple of weeks that we could probably do a show about, but we don't do that here.
Yeah.
So we're going to go all the way back to 1983 when wrestling was still good.
Well, let's get out that the MWO show was pretty darn good. That was here on Saturday.
That's true. If anybody missed it live or has not watched it, you can look it up on YouTube. The Orion ONTV page has it as well. I had the CEO of the Michigan Wrestling Organization, Jason the Basher Klaus, as my guest on the Doghouse. He made a major announcement that I won't spoil here, so go back and check it out.
Yeah, nice job. Nice job with CEO Klaus, by the way.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I like your interviews. They're about the best there is out there right now. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was more of an old school show this weekend.
Yeah, it was actually.
And that's more of the style that I liked. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Honestly, besides the last three matches, because at one point, I don't know if you remember, they put out a collection of Starrcade. At the time, you could only really get them on VHS.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that I asked for Christmas that year. I want to say it was 1989 or maybe 1990. Because back then, I mean, it was like a two tape set, but it was like $50 back then or something.
Yeah, you remember you go buy a movie, and on VHS, and they were $30.
Yeah. So I have seen the last three matches of this Starrcade that we're going to talk about quite a few times. It had been a long time since I'd watched them, but when I was watching these other matches, I don't remember ever watching these other matches on here. I may have seen them, but if I did, I didn't remember.
Yeah.
But man, I was just watching this thinking, I really miss this style of wrestling so bad.
Yeah.
I really did. I got a lot of notes. I'm sure you do too. So let's get right
pages
into
and pages and pages.
So
the environmentalists, the tree huggers are going to be coming after me. That's for sure.
So again, this is Starrcade 83. This was the first Starrcade called Flair for the Gold. It happened on November 24th from the Greensboro Coliseum complex.
Great facility for wrestling.
Apparently, in the southern states, they had it on closed circuit television as well. They said that they drew over 16,000 fans in the house. Let's get right to it. We start off with the Dean of Professional Wrestling, Gordon Soley, and Bob Cottle introducing the show. Actually, you know what? They don't introduce the show. They kind of go right into it. At least, I watched it on the network. So
yeah, they went right into the first match.
Yeah, so they went right into the first match. But I think I just wrote that down because those are our announcers.
Yeah.
For the matches. So the first match.
Well, before we get to the first match, I got a couple notes just about that event in general.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, here's just you mentioned 16,000 fans. That was a sellout at Greensboro, a stronghold for, at the time, NWA territory, Mid-Atlantic. In 2017, the WWF, I think with their SmackDown brand, went to Charlotte to kind of revive Starrcade on Thanksgiving night, and they drew 10,500 fans. So that was a little dip in attendance prior to, what was that, 17, 20 years earlier, whatever it was, 15. And they tried in 2018, and they went to Cincinnati, Ohio, and drew 7,500 fans. So,
oh, okay.
Just a little tidbit there to show you that everybody seems to think the wrestling is bigger now. You'd see WWE on TV all the time, but the fans aren't there.
Well, I mean, was it an actual SmackDown television show, or was it a house show?
House show. But they did everything locally, hyping it like it was Starrcade, like they used to.
Oh yeah, the first Starrcade that WWE did a year ago, they actually incorporated some old school stuff, and then I think they had the Rock and Roll Express on there. This year, it seems like they just didn't do all that. I don't remember, but it didn't seem like they did all that like they did the year before. So now they're just using the name just to try to draw a crowd to a house show.
Yeah,
a glorified
really.
house show.
Yeah.
Was that it, or did you have?
Yeah, that was it, really.
Okay. Yeah. So the first match we get right into, and it is the Assassins with Paul Jones versus Bugsy McGraw and Freight Train Rufus R. Jones. The Assassins are Hercules Hernandez and Jody Hamilton. It was still Jody Hamilton.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
The Assassins end up winning with a schoolboy, kind of with the old mask switcheroo type deal. The masked confusion.
Well, you know what? That's what I thought when I watched it, and I'm like, that looked weird because, Jody Hamilton, the original assassin, is a lot bigger than assassin number 2, Hercules Hernandez. But what they did when they went on the rope, they did the blind tag. Hernandez, assassin number 2, was thrown into the rope and put his hand out, and Hamilton tagged him.
Oh, okay. I missed that part.
Yeah, I did too. When I first watched it, I'm like, they couldn't have screwed that ending up that bad, and I rewound it, and he made a blind tag.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't really blind. Assassin 2 stuck his hand out, so that's why Assassin 1 came in and rolled him up, and referee Tommy Young didn't, get him out of the ring or anything. So, yeah.
I just thought it was like the mask because they were both wearing the same thing. While I was watching this, I was thinking, why would you put Hercules, probably one of the best bodies of anybody in there around that time?
Yeah.
And you cover him up head to toe.
Well, he had to learn how to work,
He looked good. I mean, he still looked pretty good.
Yeah, and he had been working with Hamilton for a while. They've been doing a lot of work together.
Yeah.
You figure if he's, the other train of thought is, well, if he looks that good and everything, you kind of don't want to throw him out there right away without the mask and everything. They eventually took it off a couple years or a year and a half later in an angle.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying when I was watching that, I was like,
oh, yeah.
I was like, man, all these other guys. I mean, there was a few guys, but I mean, look at the guys that they were wrestling, Bugsy McGraw and Rufus R. Jones. I will say this, a few shows back, we mentioned Slick being Rufus R. Jones's son, but you were correct. It is his son, and it was like his adopted son.
Oh, okay.
Or I believe it was his adopted son.
Oh, good job following up on that.
I thought it was
I got things I haven't followed up on.
Yeah, I've caught a couple things, but I just happened to actually be reading some article in it, and that came up on it. So
oh, really?
Then I looked it up. Huh. Yeah, everybody else verified it. So, but he does kind of look like him, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at. Well, we'll get into it later, but but anyway, so the Assassins win with the schoolboy. Then we go to. I mean, the match was okay.
Yeah, you know what? I thought it was a good opener.
Yeah, it was. It was fine. I mean, it was a little repetitive.
8 minutes, 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Bugsy McGraw tying this back locally. He kind of started out here in Detroit. And I just heard an interview with him a couple weeks ago, which is kind of ironic that it comes up. He's got a book out now. He started as the Big O. Here in Detroit, started in 1967.
Oh, okay.
And some of his stuff is out there, like when he's in Memphis, when he's in his heel, being the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And his whole deal was he was a psychotic Vietnam vet, right?
Yeah.
Agent Orange or something screwed him up.
Right.
And his promos were awesome.
I remember seeing a little bit of that. But as far as, excuse me, as far as his babyface work goes, I mean, I've seen a lot of people kind of dog him for not being the greatest worker. He looks, he was fine for what he did. Yeah. I mean, he did what he had to do, and he was over huge.
Yeah.
In NWA or whatever.
World class.
Yeah, in world class, he was always over huge.
Oh, he was big in Florida too in the 70s.
Yeah.
Early 80s. He was a monster.
Yeah. So anyway, the match was fine. A decent opener, like you said. Then we go to Bob Caudle and Gordon Soley, who pitch it to Tony Schiavone in the locker room. I'm just going to gloss over this part.
Did you see Piper and Flair going over strategies in the background silently?
Yeah, I did. Then we get Tom Miller as our ring announcer, who introduces our second match, which is Johnny Weaver and Scott McGee versus the Purple Haze, Marc Lewin, and Kevin Sullivan with Gary Hart as their manager. Again, I mean, the match was okay. They had already been doing the Devil Worshipper stuff, correct?
Yeah, they had just started. Yeah,
Because
they'd been doing it because Sully was referring to him as.
That's what I was going to say. He threw a couple things
a druid.
Out. Yeah.
You
He
know,
threw that out there.
Yeah, and they did start that down in Florida that year.
Yeah, and because they did the whole thing, because that's when he started teaming with Lewin when he brought him out of the water as the Purple Haze. They kind of downplayed that whole aspect for this, though.
Yeah, right.
Like I mean, they, like you said, they hinted at it.
Yeah. Well, because people in the Carolinas would know
right
what was going on in Florida anyway.
Right, that's true.
You know,
couple decent. Well, I mean, I'll just go to the ending. I mean, the match was fine, but kind of a cool ending. Something that I don't ever remember seeing is the Johnny Weaver was on the ground with his hand up. I think he was on his stomach. Maybe not, but either way, they did kind of like a double arm twist.
Yeah.
Sullivan,
like a merry-go-round arm twist.
Yeah, they were like spinning around with it with his wrist, and then that led to Purple Haze coming off the top rope, hitting him in the arm with a knee, and then that led to a pinfall on Johnny Weaver. Then after the match, Scott McGee, well, they start going after Gary Hart. Gary Hart gives him the golden spike that they used. Kevin Sullivan used quite a bit. They bust open Scott McGee. Angelo Mosca comes in. They attack him. He blades his arm. And then I can't remember if they ended up running him off or whatever,
they did, and they got their good guys got their shine back, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah. Time of that was 6 minutes 43 seconds. You know, when I was watching this, I thought, well, dang, Marc Lewin should be like in the WWE Hall of Fame. He is probably one of the most underrated wrestlers, performers there is out there right now.
Yeah.
He was so big in New York. He was Hogan before Hogan, you know, in the late 50s into the early 60s.
Yeah.
Another guy that had big success everywhere in the world. Here in Detroit, you know, you can see matches with him against the Sheik. Yeah, there's kind of a famous one that's been on a bunch of different videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was huge.
Yeah.
And Johnny Weaver, legend in the Carolinas, you know, was in that tag team legend as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of surprised. I mean, he was older at the time of this. I mean, I was a little surprised that the way that it ended, that they just kind of beat him with that move, just kind of like out of the blue. But
he could still work there, you know.
Oh yeah,
he still looked good.
Yeah, definitely. Probably not too long after this, he went. You know, he pretty much became an announcer exclusively.
Yeah, he was tied into the office there in Mid-Atlantic for a while. One thing I noticed in this match, the referee work, it was so refreshing to see. There was a time where Kevin Sullivan was beating on one of the other guys in the ring. I can't even remember which one. It was Scott McGee. And then Marc Lewin came in under the second rope and reached out and got a tag from Sullivan and came into the ring. And the referee was Sonny Fargo of, you know, Fargo fame.
Yeah. Right.
Made him get back out and make a legit tag. And they did that a couple times during the match. And it was just so nice to see, like, some of that detail that's missing today is, you know, like following the rules. And that's helped them get heat when they needed to.
Right.
You know? Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Then we go back to Gordon Soley and Bob Cottle. And they pitch it to Barbara Clary, who interviews some of the fans that are there. And then we go to Tony Shivani in the locker room with Harley Race. Race just talks about basically what he's going to do to Ric Flair.
Harley Race interviews, they just mesmerize me. They're so good.
Oh, I know.
Oh, and Barbara Clary was from Championship Wrestling from Florida.
Okay.
Dusty Rhodes, who was booking this show, was in Florida at the time, and you know, you see he brought some of his talent up there, and she was one of them.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure where she was from because I don't remember seeing a whole lot of her, or if I'd ever seen her before at all.
Probably didn't, you know.
Then we go to match number 3, which is Carlos Colon versus Abdullah the Butcher, a match that they claim was banned in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Well, apparently this was being sent via satellite to Puerto Rico as well.
Right.
In addition to some of their other closed circuit locations.
Yes. I mean, the match was fine for what it was. Typical match. I've seen a lot of matches with these guys. Really nothing spectacular. It went what? How long? About 6 minutes?
4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah. Didn't go very long.
Referee Stu Schwartz stood there a lot during this match.
We get Hugo Savinovich running in and interfering after a ref bump, which gives Abdullah the Butcher the victory.
Yeah. Carlos Colon, a big legend in Puerto Rico. You know, one thing I noticed with these guys is they didn't get the reception that you would expect as a hardcore, you know-it-all wrestling fan there in the Carolinas. Because nobody had seen them. Their Puerto Rican TV didn't go up to Carolinas.
Yeah.
They hardly, people knew Abdullah because they'd bring him in every once in a while, and he got a decent reaction. But it was good once the match got going that they kind of got the crowd into it.
Yeah, Carlos, actually, it seemed like Carlos got a mixed reaction. It seemed like there was just as many boos. But then when they introduced Abdullah, though, he got booed.
Yeah.
Exclusively. So it didn't sound as bad for Carlos, but
yeah, Abdullah was enough of a heel where they could, work the match and at least get a decent reaction out of it. But that was a tough go for those guys in that crowd.
Yeah, definitely.
They weren't on for the local show; they were on for the distributed show.
Right.
One thing I did take note of while I was watching this, because they were both had the feud in Puerto Rico since the 70s, late 70s that started. That Gorilla Monsoon owned part of Puerto Rico. He was one of the guys with Carlos Colon and Viktor.
Quinones? Was it Viktor Quinones?
Yeah. Yeah, that started World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that was, I don't know, it just popped in my head. Monsoon had part of that territory until the late 80s. That's who Brody was going to buy out to get in on that territory.
Right.
And
then,
and then he got murdered.
I will say that when I was watching it, I was thinking, this is also a AWA Remco 2-pack that you could have bought a couple years later.
Yeah, exactly.
Under the AWA banner then, but still.
You don't know how many times I had the fake blood going on those two guys.
Oh, how can you not?
I know.
Then so from there, we get Tony Shivani again.
Did you notice they had trouble with Shivani's name at first, and Gordon Solie had trouble the whole time?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he couldn't pronounce Shivani right. He called him Chavone.
Oh, yeah. I think I did catch that. Yeah, Bob Cottle kind of butchered a few things too, as far as calling, but he kind of always did. But back then you could get away with that. I mean, you had the guys in World Class that would do the same. Well, Bill Mercer would kind of do the same thing.
I want to talk about this now because I kind of made a note of it when I thought of it later on in the card, but this was really the first time, because I was noticing a lot of mistakes, even production type mistakes throughout the show.
Yeah.
But this was the first time they were really running an event like that.
Right.
Where, different locations, and granted everybody's in one spot and the production is coming from there, but you also had a booker in Dusty Rhodes who was out of town. He didn't live there in Charlotte in the Mid-Atlantic area, and he flies into town. So it seemed like they were just setting a lot of this up on the fly.
You think so?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Not necessarily booking the card, but putting the show together. Who's going to be where, cutting to what interview? Because they made they made some mistakes like that a few times, and
They did, but there was some problems too. There was like some audio
sure,
problems, and
right,
so they
yeah,
had to
that's what I'm
redo a
talking
couple
about.
things.
Yep.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah,
I just think that was just because that's what happens with live events, and they didn't have like the experience that they would have had with doing something
sure,
like that
yeah,
until later.
yeah.
So we get Tony Shivani with Angelo Mosca, and sitting next to him is a bloody Tom McGee.
Laying there bleeding like a stuck
Just-
pig.
Yeah, that's all he pretty much did.
That was awesome.
But I did notice that Angelo Mosca tried to put his son over, who was probably one of the worst wrestlers of all time to ever get a push. Maybe.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean,
He wasn't ready.
no, not at all. I mean, I recently watched a match with him and Ivan Koloff when I want to say he won the Mid-Atlantic title from Ivan Koloff, and it was horrible.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Luckily, Ivan was
Yeah.
the professional that he was, because if anybody else probably would have shot on him big time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe not because it's Mosca's kid, but still, yeah, it was horrible. And I was just watching and thinking that kid is lucky
Yeah,
that Ivan is such a professional, because it was just bad. It was just horrible.
well, that was a good interview with Angelo Mosca on
Angelo
Marc
Mosca
Lewin.
was a very good talker, and he was all over this thing.
Yeah,
I don't remember him a whole lot after this, so I don't remember what happened to him.
yeah. He wound up. He had a
He
heel
went
turn.
to Canada, didn't he, and kind of started his own promotion, or
he
was
was-
part of a promotion up
Yeah,
there.
he was in with the Toronto office there.
Right.
Toronto
Okay.
Maple Leaf Wrestling was still associated with the NWA, and Mosca was a huge name in Canada. Maybe even at the time he was. I mean, he was a football legend, a wrestling legend.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
He was-
that's why he was all over it.
Yeah. He was definitely a good talker.
Yeah.
I mean, a big, intimidating dude too. So.
Yeah.
Then we get Barbara Clary with the fans again. Then we go to match number 4, which is Cowboy Bob Orton and Dick Slater versus Chief Wahoo McDaniel and Marc Youngblood. Decent enough match.
Yeah, I thought it was a good match.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And when I was watching it, I was thinking that, we talk about, well, not we, but people talk about a lot of different wrestling families and the legacies and stuff. And the Youngbloods seem like they get left out. And they actually, I mean, Jay passed away at a young age, but Marc and
Chris.
yeah. They were a tag team for a long time in WCW and Global, and and they were actually a great tag team.
Well, beside that, their dad was Ricky Romero, famous wrestler on Texas, L.A. I mean, from the 50s, the guy fought everybody. He was over. Super Mex, maybe if you ever heard that, but
Yeah, they just don't. I was just thinking that, like, Marc, watching Marc Youngblood, and I was just thinking, man, these guys just don't ever get mentioned by anyone anymore. And they were actually a great team. I don't remember if they ever won the WCW tag team titles or not, but
the Youngbloods themselves?
did they?
No, I don't believe
think
so.
they did.
No,
I
I
mean,
think
I'm sure they
Jay
won them.
Youngblood.
Well, Jay Youngblood died, but
Yeah.
it would have been Marc and Chris.
Yeah, they
were
never did.
They were like the Renegade Warriors in there
Yeah.
when they were like really pushing the tag teams in like the early 90s. I think they probably, I want to say maybe they held the USWA or Global tag team titles. It
Yeah,
seems
they
like
had the
did
global
have-
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. But anyway,
Yeah, that was a
Orton ends up winning. I mean, Orton and Slater end up winning when Orton gives Marc the superplex, and then post match they work over Wahoo's arm.
they break his arm.
Yeah, there was a lot of arm working over on this pay per view,
Yeah.
or on this card, I should say. It was before pay per view, but
Yeah, this match was booked as Youngblood and Wahoo McDaniel trying to avenge Orton and Slater for their attack on Ric Flair, which, put him out of action, and Ric Flair was retired after Orton and Slater gave him a spike pile driver. So this was set up for McDaniel and Youngblood to give Orton and Slater their comeuppance.
the whole thing kind of seemed like they were building towards maybe a feud between Steamboat, Youngblood, and Flair, and Race, Orton, and Slater somewhat. Just the way they were doing the interviews.
But that's how it had been, like, building up to it, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought Youngblood and Steamboat had just come off the Cornoodle Sergeant Slaughter feud.
They did. That was two or 3 weeks earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But then Cornoodle was out there putting them over later.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Orton and Slater, an underrated tag team in the annals of wrestling.
Yeah.
They just didn't stick around that long to be considered great, but they were a great team.
Yeah, and those are two guys that I just always liked.
Yeah.
Just two solid workers. Neither of them really were main event status guys.
Right.
Never really like reached.
Well,
that,
Slater kind of
reached that
was
level.
for a while. You know, late
Well,
70s, early 80s.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
He was the Mid-South North American champion.
Yeah, he was
while.
great. He was one of those guys that caught on quick, you know, and he
Yeah.
had the accident. People said he wasn't the same after, but he could still have a great match
Yeah, definitely.
even after that.
Definitely. One thing about Slater, I mean, this happened years later, but he will always be known as the man who gave Sting a swirly backstage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Slater was a tough guy. He was another Funk disciple, and you could tell by the way he
yeah.
wrestled, you know.
Yeah.
Also in that, Wahoo McDaniel, former NFL player for the New York Jets. Big, huge fan favorite in the NFL, especially for the Jets. Anybody listening out there in New York and a Jets fan, you probably heard Wahoo McDaniel before, as well as being a wrestling legend.
Right. Yeah, I was never a huge fan of Wahoo, but all those three other guys were like, not saying Wahoo wasn't a great worker, but those three other guys I really liked. Wahoo, I just never. I mean, he was older when I saw him.
Yeah.
And you know, getting towards the end of his career, I don't know. It just seemed like he just relied too heavily on the chops.
Yeah.
For my liking.
But his feud with Magnum, with the Raging Bull.
Yeah, I
you
mean
know,
that was
awesome.
that was cool, but I don't know. I was just never a huge fan of his. But anyway, so then we go backstage once again with Tony Schiavone, who's along with Flair, Steamboat, and Jay Youngblood. Then we get Barbara Clary with Dusty Rhodes trying to cut his promo about himself getting the winner of the Race and Flair match. But there is audio problems. So Sully kind of takes over once again.
Do you notice the sweet yellow tinted sunglasses that Dusty had?
I did not notice
I want a
that.
pair of those.
I did not notice that.
But, you know, like another thing with the interviews, they were all, everything was presented like a sport. Like all the interviews.
That's what I was going to say, too.
The good guys are,
you know,
more humble and like they were talking about a baseball game.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing when I was watching it. I was like, and that's probably what I miss. You know, that's part of what I miss a lot of. I mean, Gordon Soley always presented it like a true sport.
Right.
You know, Cottle too, but more so Soley.
As we did in the MWA as well.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, honestly, even the whole card was built up like a sport, and it was built up to it like a prize fight, you know?
Yeah.
From start to finish.
Then we go to match number 5, which is Charlie Brown from Out of Town, a mask versus TV title match. Charlie Brown from Out of Town versus the Great Kabuki with Gary Hart. Kabuki was the television champion at the time. The stipulation was that if Charlie Brown didn't beat him within 15 minutes, that he'd have to unmask.
It was the 15-minute stipulation was for him to win the TV title, but the other stipulation was that if Charlie Brown lost, he would have to unmask himself.
Okay.
Because the whole deal was Kabuki and Hart is saying that's really Boogie Woogie Man Jimmy Valiant.
Right.
You know, because they beat him in a loser leave town match, so he came back under a mask.
Charlie Brown.
So if he had to be unmasked, he would have to leave for a year. But the 15 minutes was only for he had to beat Kabuki within that time frame to win the TV title.
Okay.
Yeah, because the TV title, the time limit was 15 minutes for that.
Oh, okay.
Sonny Fargo was the referee on that one as well.
He was again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to say about this match, I actually really enjoyed this match. But I was a big Jimmy Valiant fan.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I just really liked his babyface persona that he portrayed in the NWA. Just because he was like, I don't know,
he just loved his
shtick. Just constantly moving and talking and doing. And he's another guy that like people say was not a great worker or whatever. I mean,
like Bugsy McGraw.
But this match, I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell. One thing that I want to say is he did a couple like back body drops that were like weird. Like he would actually come off the rope like he was going to do a shoulder tackle.
Yeah.
But then he'd like back body drop Kabuki. He did it like 2 times.
Yeah, without going all the way down, he kind of just chuck him up.
But he was coming off the rope himself instead of throwing Kabuki off and doing it. It was just kind of an odd thing. I mean, it looked cool, but it was just something that you just don't see. I mean, you would never see that nowadays. But but anyway, Kabuki ends up missing a dropkick in the corner. Charlie Brown comes off the ropes, gives him the elbow drop for the pin.
That was kind of a weird, like out of nowhere finish.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
But the match went. How long did that match go?
Oh, geez, that was.
I mean, they gave
10 minutes, 35 seconds.
Yeah, I was going to say, they gave that some decent time. And, I mean, that was pretty good. I mean, because Charlie Brown, Valiant, worked over Kabuki for quite a bit in the beginning. Then Kabuki made his comeback and was kind of working him over. And I don't know. I really enjoyed this match. Anyway.
And you know, to be honest here, I was watching the match and I liked it. But Kabuki was getting all of his offense, you know, the heat from a claw hold. And they worked the claw hold for a long time. And so on my controller, I hit the fast forward button once.
Okay.
I only hit it once so I could still watch what was going on because they did a lot of that claw hold.
They did.
And it was funny.
He even came off the top and got him in a claw hold.
Yeah. So when they're doing that, you know, I'm watching it fast forward and I'm like, I feel like I'm cheating myself, you know. And then on the screen, I was watching like the WWE, you know, version of that. And they had a WWE fast forward thing as I'm watching it that sped it up even more and went to a.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like, I wasn't the only one thinking about that. But yeah, I liked the match and the crowd was into it.
He didn't keep him in the claw hold that long.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, he did. To the WWE, he did too. But yeah, that match is just a brawl. What about the Kabuki?
Yeah.
Gary Hart creation, man. That guy was kind of, he sold a lot of tickets. You look at the guy and, you know, he just wasn't like all that great a shape, but he could go.
Yeah, I mean, there was a show on ESPN that would like watch old. They would kind of review. They kind of give the Mystery Science Theater 3000 treatment to old matches, and I remember them like talking about. They showed Kabuki quite a few times because they'd show World Class, and it was just like they were just like chop chop kick, chop chop kick, chop chop kick.
Yeah.
I mean, he mixed it up a little bit in this match, but by the time he was in World Class, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, well, you didn't really have to do much in World Class.
He didn't have to. Well,
yeah,
that's true. I mean, yeah, you could get over huge just because you were, quote, a bad guy.
Yeah.
Especially if you were with Gary Hart.
Yeah.
It didn't really matter.
And one of your favorites, Bruiser Brody, he's the one that recommended this guy to Gary Hart.
Now, recently.
Out of Kansas City.
Okay, recently I've watched some of Kabuki's work in Japan, and I think it was a lot better than what I've seen of his American work.
Yeah, different style.
Yeah, totally. Like, yeah, I mean, look at Hogan and other guys that worked over there. It's totally different.
Well, Kabuki did some good stuff in like Mid-South, and there's matches out there where you're going to see a lot because that's his style with the kicking and whatnot. But
I mean, I'm not knocking him. I mean, he was more of a gimmick than anything.
Yeah.
But I mean, he surprised me in this match.
Yeah.
I mean, because he did, you know, he was doing like kind of the jumping spin kicks and, you know, some different stuff. But
Valiant was over, wasn't he?
He was over huge.
I know. And what was cool is he was like one of the guys that would fight from underneath. You know, he'd do the
Oh, yeah,
shaking
always,
and everything.
Always, yeah.
Yeah, and that helped him get him over too. I mean,
Yeah.
a little hint for any aspiring wrestlers out
That's what I was
there.
gonna say. He was like always moving, even when he was on the mat.
Yeah.
His legs were shaking. He was just always moving.
I do like the handsome Jimmy Valiant better than Boogie Woogie Man. Now I do. I didn't, before.
Okay.
Like when we were watching Memphis when it came on and they brought Valiant back. I'm like, God darn it, why don't they have him Boogie Woogie Man?
Yeah.
But now
yeah.
after watching all the Memphis stuff,
Really?
now I know why Lawler and those guys said he took a bunch of shortcuts. Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you get a chance to see that stuff, like
Oh,
watch
no,
those shows.
I'm not saying that he was great, and I'm not saying he was a great worker and had great matches. Believe me,
Yeah.
he was just entertaining.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. Yeah,
Highly
big time.
entertaining.
He was one of those guys that did all the shucking and jiving, like Bugsy and
Yeah.
who was the other one on there? Rufus R. Jones.
Yeah, Rufus R. Jones.
Dusty.
Going back to that match, that's what I was saying. Rufus and Bugsy just kind of did the same thing in the whole match. Like
their
they
styles were kind of
acted the
similar.
same way. We're doing the elbows, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Good punches though.
Oh yeah, everybody. I couldn't knock anybody's punches in this whole show.
Yeah.
All right, so then we go back to Soli and Coddle with Dude Walker from G105.
He got over like a fart in church. It seemed like Bob Cottle wasn't even listening to him.
No, I don't think they
Because
were.
he said something at the end after that guy left. I'm like, man, you could at least put the guy over. You weren't even listening to him.
No, not at all. Not at all. Who knows? That might have been a last minute thing too.
Yeah.
They just threw him on there.
Yeah.
Then we go back to Shivani in the locker room with Ray Slater and Orton.
Hmm.
Then we go to Barb.
That was a great interview with those guys.
It was.
And
Yeah,
it was awesome.
Yeah.
God, because you would watch it and just think, that's really them.
Right.
Nothing memorized. They just, even people that didn't have a great interview, they were real.
Again, that's what I miss about everything. I'm just like, man, watching all this stuff that it was not scripted out, written by somebody else for them to repeat.
Yeah.
It was just like they knew what they had to do and they knew how to get stuff over, and that's what they did.
Yeah. Even if they were, even a lot of people memorized, it wasn't scripted, but they would script it in their head.
Right.
You didn't know.
Yeah. But this stuff they were doing on this show didn't seem like it was that at all.
Yeah.
It was just like, hey, this is my character, and this is
you're an athlete in the locker room.
This is
Let's
what I
talk
gotta
to you.
act like. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So then we get Barbara Clary with Dusty Rhodes for the second try, and they actually get through this one with no audio problems.
With those yellow sunglasses and Dusty just pumping Dusty.
Yeah.
She did a good job in the crowd, I thought.
Yeah, she did a good job. I mean, this was, they changed it up though. This part was her and Dusty in front of the screen that Soli and Coddle were in. So I don't know if they were having audio issues.
Yeah, because they tried in the crowd earlier.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like because they were out in the crowd or whatever. This week was actually the 4-year anniversary of Dusty Rhodes' death. Also, I just
really has it been 4 years?
Yeah, I was surprised when I saw that too.
No kidding.
Yep. That leads us to match number 6, which is the dog collar chain match between Roddy Piper and Greg the Hammer Valentine, who was the U.S. champion at the time, but this was not a U.S. title match. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. This match is very infamous. Piper claimed that he lost a certain percentage of his hearing, which nowadays, I mean, back when I heard that back in the old days, I believed it. Nowadays, I just think it was Piper being Piper because he claimed for the rest of his life that he actually lost so much percentage. But that was the whole storyline. Valentine said that he was going to take Piper's hearing, and that's what they kept putting over later on.
Well, when this feud started, it started because Piper lost hearing in his left ear because Valentine hit him with a ring bell.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And
so he was saying that he was going to take the rest of his
yeah.
hearing, right?
But to Piper's defense, when he's talking about this on the interviews. He's talking about the feud. You know, they'll
Yeah.
be talking about the match, kind of like when Bret Hart says, "Well, you know, that was one of the best matches on the show." He was not talking about one match. He's talking about all of their matches throughout the feud they were doing. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Now, I will say this. I've complained about this before, and I noticed it in this match. Not that the people watching would not know who Piper and Valentine were, but it really bothered me that they were wearing the same color trunks. There's just something when I go back and watch these that really bothers me. It's like why wouldn't the promoter or whoever, why wouldn't they have just made that a rule back then? It's like, it just seems like such a simple thing where they could have just said, just don't wear the same color trunks.
Well, you look at it that way now. I mean, you know, everything has to evolve. Be like, well, how come when they made the phone,
no,
they
I
don't
know.
have a? It wasn't a cell phone.
No. That's what I'm saying. I understand that, but it's like, you know, especially them trying to present it as a real sport. It's like, you know, if I know that you're not trying to present it like boxing, but still, it's like, you know, boxing's like the guy in this trunk with this colored trunks and the guy in this colored trunks. I don't know. It's just
at least wear red or blue or white or something.
It's just a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you can tell Piper and Valentine apart, but my whole thing is like watching like some old matches, like say I'm watching old NWA or old UWF or something, and it's two guys that look similar that are wearing the exact same color gear, the exact same gear. My whole thing was, say you're flipping through the channels and that's the first time you're watching wrestling.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to tell the guys apart.
Well, that happened to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it happened to me back in the day too.
Yeah.
But I
remember
probably didn't realize why.
Specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like now you know, now they're wearing all different color trunks. Everybody looks like a, you know, like an LSD project, you know, with all the colors, but everybody looks the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Now this match, I thought kind of had a anticlimactic finish. I don't know if they had like planned it out to look better than what they thought it was going to, or what it ended up looking like, because, you know, Valentine came off the rope, hit Piper with the chain, goes back up, Piper's on his back, pulls Valentine off and looked like he was trying to clothesline him with the chain. It didn't really look that good. So then Piper just kind of turned over and just kind of beat him with the chain a little bit, hooked the chain around his leg, and then got the...
You know, the first time I saw that match, I thought the same thing, but every time I've seen that since, I think it's good because of what type of match it was, how it was billed, and it just looked like a street fight.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now, yeah, I guess you could say it could add some legitimacy for the time, but it just... I remember, like, I've thought that for years too. I remember watching it for the first time. I mean, good match. I mean, a good gimmick match, and you don't see a lot of that. There's not a whole lot of. I mean, I'm sure there's other ones out there, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any other dog collar chain match. Oh yeah,
there have been.
Yeah, there have been. UWF did it quite a few times.
Yeah.
But one that sticks out of my head is Duggan and Bad Dog Sawyer. But,
yeah,
and they had yeah, that one was like really bad. But I mean, it was good, but just, you know, it was just like a legit brawl almost. But
for me, this was the last word for chain matches, dog collar or wrist or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's still the standard.
Yeah.
And I loved it because it looked like a fight.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And it still holds up. I've never seen a chain match come close to this one yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Unless you're talking about Smirnoff Koloff and Eric Rabb.
Yeah. or Buddy Rogers in Iron Man.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Then we go back to Sully and Cottle again. And they throw it to Tony Schiavone in the back with Buddy Hackett. Oh, no, that's Flair and Wahoo McDaniel.
Buddy Hackett.
Apparently, Wahoo McDaniel used to hate it when people said he looked like Buddy Hackett, but
Yeah,
he looked
I don't blame him,
exactly.
but he
he looked exactly like him when he was sitting there next to Flair. Then we go to Barb Clary again with Don Cornoodle, who puts over Steamboat and Youngblood going into their match.
That was one of the things that I really enjoyed about this. Like, they had everybody, whoever Shivani talked to, or whether it was the lady in the interview and the fans in the crowd or whatever, they all talked about who they thought was going to win like the last match.
Right,
And they kind of
yeah.
did the same thing with the tag team match too, to some extent, the
Yeah.
world title tag
Right.
team match.
Yeah.
I thought it was good, just continuity and building everything up to the main event.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. That takes us to the tag team championship, which is the Briscoes of Jerry and Jack against Jay Youngblood and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat with special guest referee. Once again, Angelo Mosca gets his face on the big card.
Well, he got spiked last time he showed up. What's going to happen here?
Yeah, he did have his arm all bandaged up. Jay and Ricky end up winning it with kind of like a press drop type of move, I guess you would call it. To me, this is probably the best match on the card.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time arguing against that.
Oh, and yeah, and I have it on my shirt too. Ricky.
Oh yeah, and I got my Flair shirt on. How ironic.
Ricky and Jay won the tag team belts for the 5th time. The storyline here was that the Briscoes were not going to show up, and Jim Crockett bought their contracts out of St. Louis?
Georgia, I think.
Okay, either Georgia or St. Louis. I couldn't remember what.
Probably
what
St.
Sully
Louis
said,
with the
but
Briscoes,
I think it was St. Louis, but anyway, so that was pretty much that.
Yeah, because the Briscoes wound up, they turned on Steamboat and Youngblood, and that's kind of what got them here.
Yeah. I don't know. Nothing. I mean, like I said, I think this was the best match on the card. I've seen this match a lot of times. Nothing really I mean, I didn't really take notes on it, but I do want to just mention the Ricky Steamboat arm drags. But didn't he get those from Briscoe?
Well, I don't know.
Jack Briscoe?
I remember surmising that on the show, and I wasn't sure.
I think you're right, though.
But
I think I've heard
they
that
look so similar, no one else could do an arm drag like that.
No, I'm almost positive that I've heard that before. that he got them from Jack Briscoe.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I could not wait for Steamboat and Briscoe to lock up into this one.
Yeah,
I would have loved to see a match with Briscoe in the late 70s against Steamboat. And Steamboat would have been young. I'd love to see them both against each other in their prime.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome because both of them were just incredible at what they did.
Yeah.
Like Jack Briscoe was, I mean, he doesn't get a lot of ink for being like a world champion as much as Race and Flair because of the length of time. His style was a little bit different, but man, he was phenomenal.
Yeah. And I haven't seen a ton of his stuff, but
a lot of it was in the 60s,
Yeah.
Late 60s, early 70s. You just not much tape.
Right. And he died relatively young too, didn't he? I mean,
yeah.
he died in the 80s or was it the 90s?
90s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Steamboat and Briscoe, two of the best ever. And Jerry Briscoe, I think he's, pretty underrated for how good he was.
Yeah, he was too. I mean, and Jay Youngblood was fantastic as well. And I couldn't help but wonder when I was watching this what could have been with him. He died in late '85, I believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Would WWF have been interested in him? I don't know.
Maybe not with his size.
They brought Steamboat in around that same time.
Yeah, Steamboat was a lot bigger than Youngblood was.
Right.
Though.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I don't know if size-wise, if they would have brought him in, or if they would have brought him in, made him like a Scotty McGee type, who just pretty much, he toured, but he jobbed all the time.
He would have had work somewhere, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But the finisher in this match, I noted it just kind of came out of nowhere. It was almost like a butt kicking.
It was at the end, yeah, because once they got the hot tag, they came in, they just worked over Jerry Briscoe, I believe it was, and then they just kind of gave him like the press slam splash thing, and that was it.
I know, because I was waiting because I forgot how that finish ended, and they kind of did the hot tag, 2 sets of heat in a tag team match. They did a hot tag earlier, and then action kind of simmered down, Briscoe started going on them, and they just made a tag and started beating the crap
just
out
like
of
worked
them.
them over, and then that was it.
And they just kind of pinned them out of nowhere. But the
Right.
Briscoes got their heat back.
Yes, they
You
did.
know, and Moscow
They
took
beat up
another.
Mosca again.
Yeah. Did you see that splash that Jack Briscoe did when Jerry Briscoe had?
He had him in the figure four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he went up the top rope, and that's where Moscow got him. He was going for another splash.
Oh yeah, that was a little bit of a botch because I think Mosca was supposed to catch him totally like in a bear hug, and he kind of like
Well, it caught him on
fell-
the shoulder. There
kinda
wasn't
fell
enough
over on
room
top.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they were just positioned.
I mean,
wrong.
either way, it was fine because Mosca just kind of held him down until he got
Yeah.
kicked in the
And
head,
it looked
but-
real, you know.
Yeah, it did.
And then the good guys got up and beat the Briscoes up, you know, and Briscoes rolled away. What a great team. I used to hate them when I was little as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see a whole lot of them, so
And I
You
hated
know.
them because they did their job. you
but
know?
I remember like when I got that video and I saw that match for the first time, I was like, I've liked that match for a long time, and I was impressed with the Briscoes in that match as well. So
Yeah, because they just wrestle, and then by the end of the match, you know, you're into it. You're sitting there going, God, it's like watching Larry Zbyszko work. Come on, you know. And,
Right.
But that's what they did. You know,
yeah.
that was great.
Yep. So from there, for whatever reason, I know the reason, because they were putting the cage up. They run the production credits,
Yeah,
and Sully like goes through like names everybody, and like he's personal friends with them and talks about what a great job they do. Then we get Bob Cottle again, who throws it to Shivani, who's in the back with Flair, Charlie Brown from out of town, Piper, Steamboat, and Youngblood. Then we go back to Sully. and-
those are great interviews.
No, they were. No, they were. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from them, but
Yeah.
but it was just like you could tell they were like stretching. I mean, looking back now, Sully and Cottle. We go back to them. They tried to throw it to Barb Clary at one time and say she's not ready. So then they're like stretching for time.
Is that what
But
happened?
again,
Because I
yeah.
couldn't figure out who. I was writing down what she was doing, and I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, they were gonna throw it. They were gonna throw it to her again, and then they said that she wasn't ready. There was some audio issues,
Yeah,
probably
okay, all right.
again. So then, basically, Sully and Cottle.
They should have had Joe Johnson producing that.
Huge credit to those guys, though. They just started like recapping the show.
Yeah.
And then finally, like, you could tell like Sully's looking over for the cue, and finally, like Cottle starts talking. He's like, "Well, I think Barb Clary's ready again." So then they finally like throw it back to her.
So who'd she wind up?
She was with Dusty in the crowd with like the four women, the four fans.
Oh, okay.
And basically, she asked them what their prediction was. Of course, they all said Flair. And then Dusty said he was going to give his prediction, and then he's like, "I'll give it to you later." Then we go back to Sully and Cottle. Then we get the national anthem with James Weeks,
Nice.
who botched the lyrics and kind of botched the singing as well. I mean, it wasn't horrible. It's better than I could do, but I did notice he botched the lyrics.
Yeah, a lot of people do that under pressure, you know?
Yeah.
They say it's one of the hardest songs to perform.
Yeah,
You
true.
know?
That's true. Not my favorite version, but you know, it was fine for what it was, I suppose. But this leads us to the World Heavyweight Title match in a cage, the Flair for the gold. Ric Flair versus Harley Race with special guest referee Gene Kiniski.
Yeah, and they named the show after this match.
They did.
Starrcade 1983, A Flair for the Gold.
I will say this. Throughout the whole show, Gordon Soley kept talking about the new era of professional wrestling. So, did they already know at this point? They already had to know that Vince had the national expansion plans, Vince Jr.
No, they were just going a different direction with Flair.
Are you sure though? Because I mean, this really only took place a few months before Hogan won the belt,
Yeah.
and Vince Jr. had already had the company.
But I don't think it had anything to do with that. It was just they were going a different direction away from, you know, because Flair was completely different than Race, different
Right.
than Briscoe, different than Funk.
So you think it was just kind of like their youth movement thing?
Yep.
I mean, then because then you got Steamboat and Youngblood
Yep.
beating the Briscoes. So you think that
Yeah.
that was it? They
Yeah.
were just going kind of with the younger
Yeah,
guys.
because I've never heard it like hearing like Flair or anybody that I've listened to really say that was the impetus for, saying it's a new era or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just when I kept hearing that over and over, I was thinking this has got to be because they know what Vince is up to.
Well, they wouldn't have known that he was
trying to,
going to run with Hogan.
Cut it off. The path. Well,
because to those guys, they look at their past champions and go, Backlund, Graham, at the time Iron Sheik. They're not too concerned about.
No, would the Sheik have already had it at that point? Didn't the Sheik only hold it for like a month?
Yeah,
this would have been a couple months before Sheik had it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
So, so it's still Backlund.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, this is another match that I've seen over and over and over and over. Not my favorite cage match. Not my favorite Flair cage match. It is what it is. It's fine. It's fine for what it is. A good brawl. Both of them blade. I don't think you needed Gene Kiniski in there.
Another famous world champion, Gene Kiniski, another Gene in wrestling.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about him. I was a bigger fan of his son Nick. I haven't seen a whole lot of Gene Kiniski, but I really honestly was a big fan of Nick Kiniski. I wanted bigger things for him after I saw him in AWA, and I think he did go into WWF at one point, but he never amounted to much there. But,
yeah.
But anyway, so the finish is Race has Flair in a headlock. Flair goes to throw him off. He headbutts Gene Kiniski. This looked like it was botched. I think Flair was supposed to come off the rope and give him a flying body press over just standing there and not go up top. I think that was supposed to lead into him coming off the rope, giving him a body press because he went for it, and Race kind of like took him over to the side.
Yeah.
I think it was supposed to trip Race over Gene Kiniski. That's the way it looks to me. Because you could see them talking to each other.
Yeah, right.
And then so Flair ends up going up, and they do it again off the top. Not very pretty.
No.
But whatever. It got the job done, and you didn't have to be. It's pretty back then.
Yeah. That's why I liked it. I thought, I like this match. I probably like this one better than the Briscoes and Youngblood, only because the way that match finished. Technically and everything, the Briscoes and Youngblood and Steamboat was better.
Yeah, I mean, it was flawless. I mean, it was more flawless than this one.
Yeah. But I just like the realism of it and the way like Flair sold and Race. You could hear Flair Flair would yell and all that crap.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people did that.
No, that's true. We should mention the overhead shots.
Yeah.
Sully did mention that at one point too. But that was a cool thing.
Yeah. Did you see the one where they had it overhead and Harley's going into the corner and he kind of hits his shoulders into the turnbuckle and he goes straight and then comes down and they had that shot from overhead. It looked so cool.
I don't specifically remember
he hung
that.
in the air.
No, yeah. I don't specifically remember that. But that was a cool, like, innovative thing. They didn't really keep doing that later on.
No.
But that was cool.
They did a couple times. Didn't they do that on one of the clashes? Or maybe two of them?
Yeah, I mean,
it was a Great American Bash.
They would, they would bring it back every now and then, but it wasn't like a all the time thing. So anyway, Flair wins the world title back for his third time at the time. Everybody comes into the ring. Flair cuts a babyface promo interview, thanking everybody once again. And then we get a bunch of crap after that. I mean, not crap, but
they were just trying to fill up airtime.
We got like 15 more minutes of them going back to interviews, back and forth.
Yeah.
So I'm not even gonna get into that part. But so overall, how would you rate this show?
Well, I want to stay on this match for a minute.
Okay.
Because I thought it was longer. It was 23 minutes, 49 seconds.
Okay.
And I thought it was, from what last time I remember watching, it was a while ago, and I thought it was like a 40-minute match.
It seemed like it.
Yeah.
It definitely seemed like it.
Referee Tommy Young, of course, he gets the, he's the best referee in there. I kind of, I not really patterned myself, but I looked up to Tommy Young when I was doing my refereeing. Great referee. And one of the things, like, how they built this match up was Harley Race put the $25,000 bounty on Flair's head.
Right.
Orton Slater put him out of action with the spike pile driver. I miss how they do, like, long running angles.
Yeah. No, I totally
that.
agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. The entrances on this. I thought I had like goosebumps, like watching the beginning, because they did what turned out to be Flair's music, from the Space Odyssey.
Right. Now, when I was watching that, was that I'm assuming was probably the first time that played for his entrance. That probably was not necessarily meant to be Flair's entrance music.
Yeah, that was to the, like, because I didn't remember it that way either. But it was played to signify this is the main event. And they had the little strobe lights and everything up there. Yeah.
Yeah. But then that becomes Flair's entrance music.
And then he came out with the smoke.
Yeah.
And everything. And my first thought was, they're making this look like Jerry Lawler in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that, 80 or 81 when he came back?
Yeah.
They used to use all the, the gimmicks and ring entrance stuff that they just started doing here, a couple years later.
Yeah.
And then the shot where so Ric Flair goes into the ring, it's just cool, like them walking into the ring with no music and you can hear the fans.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So, and all of a sudden they just show Harley Race standing there from behind. You see the race on his jacket, and oh man, it was just great. All the smoke and everything, no lights all over the place, just like spotlights, and it's kind of dark. As soon as Race starts walking, the crowd just starts booing. Oh, that was great.
Yeah, and Race took a long time to get to the ring, it seemed like, too.
Oh, yeah. But, on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Soaking up all that heat.
Yeah. Yeah, so I thought that was better than any music, It was weird, like nobody had entrance music for that whole show.
Right.
Because even Charlie Brown had entrance music on TV, but he didn't use it in the arena here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, another thing about this cage match, we talked before the differences in cage matches, like the rules. The cage in this one was specifically set up to keep Orton and Slater out of the ring.
Okay.
And you had to win, like in most of the Mid-Atlantic, most NWA territories, you had to win with a pinfall.
Yeah, when I was watching this, I was thinking, why did WWF, with the way that they did their cage matches, which you either had to come out the door or over the top, why did they even bother to ever put a referee in the cage?
Yeah, really.
You wouldn't even had to.
Yeah.
You could have had him outside the ring, let him go at it. And one other thing, while I was watching this, I was thinking, Vince Jr. must have been watching this because he plucked most of these guys out of here. By the time I started watching WWF in '84, which is just a couple months after this, Piper, Valentine, Scott McGee. It was a little. It took a little while before Steamboat showed up.
The Briscoes,
but the Briscoes. They had made that deal with him at that point. Orton.
Yeah.
They did bring in Dick Slater. I don't think that was until about '86.
Yeah, after Jake the Snake was in there.
For a short time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was watching this thinking, Vince was watching this thinking, I'll take that guy. I'll take that guy.
And beside that, they were on WTBS getting plastered all over the nation, at least where people had cable as well,
Right.
Another thing about that cage match is the rules still applied in a cage match. You couldn't choke. You had to break on the ropes,
Right.
So that was just more of a realistic feel to it, like the way that territory and some of the other territories handled their cage matches.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was like part of the thing. Gene Kiniski was kind of I don't remember if he did anything with Flair, but he definitely was like pulling Race by the hair a couple times, pulling him off Flair.
Which would have led to your hypothesis about the finish too, where he was supposed to accidentally trip over Kiniski with the flying body press from Flair.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it looks to me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm correct.
Yeah.
Because
I'd
it just
probably
seemed
bet a
like
paycheck on
way,
it.
just the way that it was set up, and then right after that, you could kind of tell they're kind of scrambling to redo the finish real quick, and then they kind of miss. I mean, like Kaniski's still like on all fours waiting for it, although they kind of miss it. But either way,
And the last thing that stuck with me on this was, since I watch a lot of Southern wrestling, like Sonny Fargo, who would show up in Memphis around Christmas time as Roughhouse Fargo,
yes,
in team with Jackie Fargo. It was just so weird that he was a referee in Mid-Atlantic forever, and he used to be a wrestler, but he just wasn't. That was a long time ago, and then he shows up in Memphis and. He's supposed to be a crazy lunatic that they let him out of the mental institution for a week around Christmas.
Right.
But the crowds would go up. They'd sell out everywhere. It's a great ploy.
Yeah. Exactly.
I thought that was great.
Dusty should have teamed him up with Bugsy.
Yeah, he could have. Then it would have looked like a Goulas territory match,
Yeah, right.
Crazy Luke Graham and all those guys just throwing fists and running around.
Yeah,
bleeding all over the place.
Yeah.
A good show. How do you compare this to the WrestleManias that we've seen?
Oh, like I said already, watching the WrestleManias, I'm like, they definitely lost their luster with time. This one, watching it, but like I said, I don't remember watching the undercard of this, but still, I was like just watching it, thinking I miss this era of wrestling so much.
Yeah.
And I don't really watch whole shows. I will like watch a match here or there, but just watching this whole show from beginning to end, just really made me realize like how different things are.
Yeah.
And I can watch like the new stuff and still like it, but it's just a totally different thing.
But you're watching it for a different deal,
Yeah, it just doesn't. It was just presented in a totally different way. I mean, they don't have to nowadays. They don't have to try to make it seem legitimate. I mean, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But
they could. They just choose not to.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the WrestleManias were just a different thing. I mean, they weren't setting out to have classic matches. I don't think they were just continuing their storylines, whatever they're gonna do. Not, it's just different, just a totally different mentality.
Yeah, different presentation, everything.
Yeah,
and really at least in my mind, this type of wrestling, like our wheelhouse, like when we were kids, like when I was watching it, it started to die like in '87. I knew in '87 it was over.
Right.
Like back in 1987, and this was like 75 to like 86, like that sweet spot.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the NWA was still okay at that point, from like 87 to 88. I mean, things were changing.
Yeah.
Definitely. AWA was still kind of the same. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely see the difference now looking back.
You wouldn't look on a card and find all these angles. I mean, that's the deal. We're going down and running through these matches, but they all had pretty much all of them, maybe except for the openers, had origins, and they were like a culmination or a continuation of a feud somewhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, they just didn't. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Well, forget about it.
Anyway, so we've gone up to what, WrestleMania 3 so far. So we'll definitely be covering more Starrcades because I really liked going back and watching this. And not that I don't like going back and watching the WrestleManias, but some of those matches are just hard to watch.
Yeah. It's just a completely different presentation of it,
Yeah.
We got used to liking our wrestling one way, and
yeah,
they produced something different.
Right. It's yeah, I mean, we could discuss this all day, like the difference, but yeah, what?
I know what I was thinking. You could watch a card like this Starrcade 83 and pretty much be into it start to finish with all the angles, and because you're used to opening matches. But like when you watch the WWF, it's just, I don't know. I don't even know why I went back to this because it's just it's so different.
Well, I mean, Vince, or a lot of guys that worked for Vince, said that he at that time, probably still even nowadays, is presenting it more of a personal appearance. Like every match is like a personal appearance for the wrestler.
Yeah.
It's not about presenting necessarily a great match, like I said.
Yeah.
And not that all these matches were great, but it was. I mean, I think that they definitely offered from top to bottom. You had different types of matches. I mean, you had some technical stuff. You had the brawls. You had the gimmick stuff.
Yeah.
You even had some comedy stuff in there.
It was a booking 101, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. A little something for everybody. And WWF tries to do that too.
Yeah.
This was before I know where I was going. You had the weed, like you could watch this whole thing and you didn't have to like tune anything out if you were like a big wrestling fan. I'm sure some people didn't like whatever, which is fine. But like the WWF, I had to find something out of the whole mess that I liked.
Right.
This is old school enough for me. Like this match here, this feud here.
Yeah.
Instead of having the whole card that way, it was, like, haha, whatever, whatever. And then, oh, this is cool, and this is cool, and this is cool. But the rest of it,
Right. Yeah. So, like I said, we'll definitely be covering more Starrcades, and we'll get to some other big cards. We might even cover some AWA and World Class stuff.
Yeah, Great American Bashes, Super Clashes.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess this wraps it up. We fantastic job as always.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your expert analysis.
You as well, Mad Dog.
Nothing really coming up to plug. So just keep checking the Butch Blood Facebook page for future shows. And we will see everybody next time, unless you got any parting words. Brace.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a good night.
Wrestling tonight.